A big week of college football is now past us, and we are off to week 6. Now, week 6 is going to be a fun, interesting little week because there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, Thursday night, thankfully, we don't have to talk about any of the games going on. But Friday starts to get a little good. We're started off with Oregon, Michigan State. Oregon walking into that game, 24-point favorites against Michigan State. Oregon coming off of a victory against UCLA. Michigan State, on the other hand, coming off of a 31-point loss to Ohio State. Now, Oregon, Ohio State, obviously there's been that big question at the beginning of the year. There's kind of been a little bit of a gap there since Ohio State's kind of separated themselves from Oregon in those discussions because Oregon obviously came out the first couple weeks, didn't look great. They won the games, didn't look great though. Ohio State's kind of separated themselves. This is a game right here for Oregon to win. Oregon needs to come in. They need to dominate this game. Do they win it by the 24? I think they will. Oregon comes in. They easily win this game against Michigan State. This is a game at home. It's a Friday night game. It's under the lights. It's going to be a big-time atmosphere in Autzen. Obviously, you all know that I used to go to Oregon. Had some buddies, they're saying that the ticket exchange, it crashed trying to get tickets for this game. It's the first game with all the students back. It's going to be a big-time atmosphere, obviously, there. I know it's Michigan State, but it sounds like the energy is going to be there. Ticket site crashing usually means that there's going to be a lot of students there. So we'll see what it comes to that. Oregon should win this game pretty easily, though. UNLV versus Syracuse. UNLV finally top 25 after crushing Fresno State. Syracuse coming off of a 42-14 win against Holy Cross. This is sad for me. UNLV, obviously, they have that win over Kansas, pretty good win. Fresno State, not a bad win there either. They have a win over Houston, who hasn't looked great. Syracuse, on the other hand, their only loss was against Stanford. Should be a solid game. UNLV's actually 6.5-point favorites, almost about a touchdown to win the game. I don't think that will be cleared. I don't think UNLV is clearing that. I think Syracuse is a solid team. But just because UNLV got in the top 25, I will ride with them for this game on Friday night. I will give them the victory. It won't be over 6.5, but they will win. Next, we got Wake Forest, North Carolina State. Another decent little game there to start off Saturday. Now, for Wake Forest, they're 1-3. They haven't been good. NC State, a little bit of a letdown so far this season. 3-2. Team that we thought could be top 25 really hasn't done much. 4.5-point favorites for NC State. I'm going to ride with NC State on that line. Wake Forest coming off a loss to Louisiana. So North Carolina State, I tend to want to take them in that game. Penn State versus UCLA. Penn State coming off of a tricky but a game that they got done against Illinois. Illinois 21-7. Penn State ended up winning that game. Tricky little game. Illinois got their upper hand early. Penn State able to fend them off. Tough game for my Illini, but Penn State is all the part of a top 10 team. Defense, very good defense. Offense, you can't stop their run, or at least we couldn't. UCLA, we just saw what happened in that Oregon game. I don't think UCLA stands a chance here. Penn State, 28.5. Here's the problem with Penn State, 28.5 being the line. I don't trust Penn State to get 35, 42 points, anything like that. I could see this being a game where UCLA doesn't score anything other than like a touchdown. I could see UCLA winning I could see it being like 35-7, but that's not 28.5. Penn State, it's just a tough one. I don't know if their offense does enough. I don't see UCLA really scoring on their defense. But we're gonna ride with Penn State. I don't think I'm gonna take that spread though. I think I'm gonna pick UCLA to actually cover their spread. Pittsburgh versus NC, North Carolina. Pittsburgh undefeated. North Carolina just lost to Duke by a point. Pittsburgh coming off that Youngstown State victory by nearly 60 points. NC has not looked. North Carolina has not looked good. They have not looked great. They obviously, I just said they had that loss to Duke. They gave up 70 to JMU. Pittsburgh, Only 3-point favorites in this game, and there's a reason for it. Pittsburgh you look at their schedule so far, they've biggest win kind of is either the West Virginia or the Cincinnati win. They gave up 24 to Kent State, who's not a great team. I'm going to ride with NC to win the game. I'm going to go with North Carolina. That 3-point favorites for Pittsburgh. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to win. Wisconsin, Purdue. It's 12-point favorites, Wisconsin. We're going to ride with Wisconsin. Really didn't need to talk about it. It's over a touchdown. That's kind of our rule on the channel. They're not ranked and they're over a touchdown. We don't talk about it. But I talked about it, so get over it. Virginia versus Boston College. Virginia coming off a victory over Coastal Carolina. Boston College getting the job done somehow, some way against Western Kentucky. They looked to have lost the game, and they figured out a way to win. Boston College, Virginia. Boston College should win. Boston College are actually underdogs. 3-point favorites is Virginia, but I have to ride with Boston College. I think they're the better team. SMU now. SMU going up against Louisville. Louisville coming off of a loss against Notre Dame. SMU coming off of a big win over Florida State. Kind of an interesting game. I view these teams to be two very similar teams. Florida State, not great, obviously. But SMU handled them. Louisville stuck with Notre Dame. But is Notre Dame as great as that? I don't know. So I'm going to ride with Louisville to win because they are favorites, but I don't think I'm going to have them cover that 7. Missouri versus A&M. Number 9, Missouri going up against A&M. A&M's actually favored in this game. A&M coming off of a 4-point win to Arkansas that had them slide somehow. They slid down with a victory. Missouri, however, are number 9. Missouri almost lost a game to Vanderbilt, but that was last week. Missouri, toughest opponent they're playing so far this year. I'll give it to A&M. It's a 2-point spread, so they almost guarantee, if they win, they almost guaranteed cover that spread. Indiana. Shout out to Indiana. They're 23rd in the country right now, going up against Northwestern this week as 14-point favorites. Northwestern. Indiana will get the job done. Undefeated Indiana. I don't see much in this Northwestern team that scored 5 points against Washington. Yeah, I think Indiana's the team to ride with in that situation. So we're gonna be riding with Indiana for this one. And then we get Iowa, Ohio State. Now that could be an interesting little game. Ohio State, 20.5 favorites. Do they score 20.5 more than Iowa? I don't know. This could be a little bit of a 28-10 type game, I'm thinking. Ohio State's obviously going to win. We'll have them cover the spread. Why not? App State versus Marshall. App State did not play last week. Marshall did. I believe. No, they didn't. Yeah, they did. They played Western Michigan. They won. Marshall obviously kind of played well against Ohio State also. I tend to think that their coaching is pretty good. Marshall's going to win that game. Miami, Ohio versus Toledo. Toledo has not been great. They have one loss only, but they lost to Western Kentucky, who I'm not super high on. Miami, Ohio, their only win is over UMass. Toledo's probably going to win the game. 6.5-point favorites. I'll give it to them. Who we got next? Georgia, Auburn. Georgia, they're coming off a loss. Looked really bad in the first half. Turned it up in the second half. They're playing Auburn. Big time game here. Bounce back. Georgia wins. They cover the 24-point spread. Ole Miss, South Carolina. Ole Miss, same thing I said for Georgia. Coming off a loss that they shouldn't have had against Kentucky. South Carolina, they're an okay team, but 9-point spread. Ole Miss covers that. Covers it big. Ole Miss belongs in the playoffs. Rutgers, Nebraska. Good game there. Rutgers undefeated, coming off of a victory against Washington a few weeks ago. Nebraska coming off of a victory over Purdue. I'm actually going to give the edge to Rutgers on this one. 7-point favorites for Nebraska. I got Rutgers with the upset. West Virginia versus Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State coming off of a loss to Kansas State did not look good. West Virginia coming off of a victory against Kansas, not pretty. I'm going to ride with Oklahoma State, though. They got the best player on the field. They're going to get the job done. Alabama versus Vandy. Vandy's been sticking with teams. Do they stick with Alabama? Absolutely not. Alabama right now is cruising. Jalen Milroe, potential Heisman candidate, there. 23-point favorites. I tend to take Alabama, cover that all day long. Old Dominion versus Coastal Carolina. Old Dominion actually had a decent week last week, beating Bowling Green, who's been pretty competitive. Coastal Carolina, on the other hand, got blown out by Virginia. Coastal Carolina's the 4.5 favorites. I'll take them. Why not? Boise State has Ashton Jeanty on their team, and as long as that is the case, I'm going to be picking them against every team that ain't ranked. Utah State, I am sorry, 26-point favorites. Boise State will run all over you. South Alabama versus Arkansas State. Not going to talk too much about it. Let's take Arkansas State. Don't really care too much about that game. Iowa State versus Baylor. Baylor looked decent last week. They looked decent. They competed with BYU. They didn't get the job done. They looked decent, though. Iowa State, obviously a ranked team, similar to kind of BYU. We're going to ride with Iowa State to get the job done. USC versus Minnesota. USC beating Wisconsin. Looked pretty solid. Minnesota, 2-2. Not super high on them. We'll take USC to cover 8.5. Michigan versus Washington. This Washington team I don't think is great. Michigan I don't think is great either. Michigan is actually 3-point underdogs. 3-point underdogs are playing out with Washington. You know what? I'll ride with Washington. Why not? Why not? Tennessee, number 4 in the country, going up against Arkansas as 14-point favorites. Tennessee, I tend to think that this team could go far in the college football playoff. I'm going to ride with them against Arkansas. UCF versus Florida. UCF last week got embarrassed as favorites. I think this could be similar. I'm going to ride with Florida. Hawaii versus San Diego State. Why do I have to talk about that? Why is this a 2.5 spread? We're going to ride with Hawaii. Why not? Kansas versus Arizona State. Arizona State is 3-point favorites. Kansas has not looked good. One of these weeks I pick Kansas. They're going to actually show that they're Kansas, the team with Jalen Daniels as the QB that was good last year. I'm going to ride with Kansas. Miami versus California. This is actually the game day game. Miami should have lost last week. Completely disagree with what they said. You cannot overturn that call, in my opinion. You got to go with what's on the field. Miami, California. I'm rooting for Cal. Miami wins it. They probably clear the 12.5. And then you got Texas Tech versus Arizona. Arizona coming off of a good week, getting the job done against Utah, proved that they can compete. Texas Tech coming off of a Cincinnati win that was close. I'm going to ride with Arizona to get the job done. Anyways, thank you for watching. I will see you next time.